Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. Well, it is tax season, our favorite season. I know all of you at home certainly enjoyed this time of the year, but it's an important time of the year to get our financial affairs in order. Our producer, Tania Sims, she spoke with a tax professional for the latest to help you out during this tax season.
Americans can officially start filing their individual income tax returns for 2022 on Monday. To help break down all of your tax return questions is Carlos Samaniego, enrolled agent and founder of Tax Debt Consultants. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So first things first, when is the deadline to file your taxes this year?
The deadline to file your taxes is April 8th. It's normally every year it's April 15th, but I believe that falls on a weekend this year. So it's April 18th this year. So one of the big things to also be aware of is that there's a bunch of states like California that I live in. The government's already given them an extension on that just because of all the flooding out here. And, you know, there's all kinds of natural disasters across the country is the government will typically extend that date. So it's really important to always make sure you know the exact date. But in terms of normal time frame, it's April 15th, except this year might be a few extra days to April 18th.
Gotcha. So people had 3 extra days to get those tax returns filed. And so you kind of touched on the importance of making sure you do that on time. So why is it important for Americans to make sure that they file their taxes on time? You know, we understand that, you know, today is the official day. However, you know, there's still a couple months later until the deadline. Why is it important to get it in now?
The reason it's so important is it's kind of specifically of what I do here is that the penalties are huge when you don't file your taxes on time. That is so important to make sure you file on time. And sometimes we get a lot of people that don't file on time just because they think I can't afford to pay the taxes. Filing is way more important because the penalties for not filing on time can be up to 25%, which is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so what should people do if, you know, to make filing taxes a little bit simpler? I know sometimes people, you know, get worried and they're like, how do I file this? I mean, I have this and that. So what are some things that people can do to make it easier for themselves?
Tell you, one of the simplest things to do is one, keep an eye out for tax documents that are coming in the mail. I literally just, for me personally, I got 2 of them yesterday. So they are going out, and most companies that have to send out their W-2s or 1099s are required to get those in the mail no later to January 31st. But here's the second thing in regards to that. Not everybody sends them in the mail anymore. A lot of times people were getting those via email. They'll get a notification, your 2022 tax documents are ready, go download them. And I've seen so many people that a lot of times they'll get audited because they didn't realize they got something in an email saying that it was a tax document. They go file the return and forgot to include a tax document that should have been in their taxes. So that's really, really important. And the next thing, I'm saying this is critical for this year. If you used the tax person in the past or want to use somebody, make sure they're still doing taxes. Our industry, we lost a lot of people who have retired, have gotten so fed up with the IRS, and they just don't want to do taxes anymore. So they may not be doing taxes. So I would actually say that's the most important thing right now. If you're planning on using a tax preparer, make sure that they're doing them, or if you used one before and you know they're doing it, make sure that they're going to be able to help you, because the last thing you want is going into April thinking that you can take all your documents and they don't even do taxes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of people probably need to hear that, especially, you know, we're in tax season. So that's really helpful. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of people hear tax season, IRS, W-2s, and probably freak out. You know, what advice can you give, you know, young adults starting to file their taxes, or just people in general who feel a little anxious during this time?
Again, it goes back to making sure you have your documentation. You know, the number one fear people have is the IRS is going to audit me. And one of the reasons that they tend to audit people is they forget to file a tax return that they have. And that brings up something really important in regards to younger people. Heck, even older people like myself, I'm in my 50s, right? It's a lot of people have been doing like these side gigs. Uber, all those side gigs where you can make some extra money. And the IRS, when you do those types of jobs, you get what's called a 1099.
Right.
There was a big hoopla over the last few months that the IRS was going to issue these 1099s that anybody made over $600. They did delay that. However, a lot of these companies had already set it up so that those things are going to get mailed out, even though the IRS said you didn't have to. Don't be surprised if you start getting a lot of these 1099Ks that you are going to have to report that income on your tax return. So that's really, really important in regards to this tax season. And I think that could cause a lot of stress if all of a sudden you get these tax documents that you have never seen before. You definitely want to talk to a tax professional in regards to that.
Absolutely. And so now, how should someone file their taxes if they've lived in more than one state in a year? Is it the same process if someone has had multiple jobs, like you just mentioned, like Uber Eats or, DoorDash, something like that? How does
Yeah.
that process work?
It's actually a little bit more complicated, and you probably would definitely want to hire somebody, hire a person that understands that process, because when you're working in multiple states, you will tend to get, W-2s or 1099s from different states, right? And what has to happen is that you got to make sure you have your resident state, the state that you actually physically lived in. They're going to want a tax return. The state where you actually earn that income, we see this a lot of times with truck drivers or people that there's a lot of probably athletes out there. It's probably the most common. A lot of people don't realize that athletes that play in different cities have to file a tax return for every city that they live in. Very similar concept in regards to earning income in different states, that state may require you to actually file a tax return there, and you don't want to be caught where you're paying double taxes in the state you lived in and then taxes in the state that you worked in. And there's ways, and the tax professional is going to know this, how to get credits for the taxes that you're paying in a different state.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. The more you know, right?
Oh, yeah.
So now, what are some red flags that the IRS is looking for when viewing someone's taxes? So, for example, what are some things that people should be making sure that they're doing so that the IRS isn't, saying, hey, wait a minute, what is this? And, it may result in like stress. And so, what are some red flags that the IRS is, possibly looking for?
Oh, absolutely. And this, again, being the founder of Tax Debt Consultants, I specialize in the tax problem after it's already happened. So everybody's hearing about the IRS hiring thousands of more employees because they want to go after people. Well, here's how we stop that. Stop them coming after you. You want to make sure, one, and we've kind of brought it up, and this might be the theme of this talk, make sure you report all your income. Make sure that all those documents that you're getting in the mail and online is being reported on your tax return. A simple one, make sure you're filing your tax return with the correct Social Security number. You will be shocked how many times I get people in here that don't know why they're being audited, and we're looking at their tax return and they kind of turned one of their Social Security numbers around, or the tax preparer did. They were going too fast. They didn't pay attention. They filed a return, or the IRS, or they get that letter from the IRS. Where's your return? They're like, I have it. It's right here. And we look at the Social Security is wrong. So you want to make sure you're doing that. You want to make sure that you're claiming credits and deductions that you actually qualify for. We had a couple of years ago, I had a really bad situation locally where a tax preparer was creating fake deductions, and the person did not really kind of review the return. When you get your return done, make sure you're professional. Tell your tax person, explain the numbers on this. Where did that number come from? It's 2 pages. They will walk you through it. This was your income. These were your deductions. These were your credits. Something very simple like that. And the final one I would say is sign the return. I'm dealing with somebody right now that, and when I say sign, if you paper mail your return, always sign the return, or make sure you sign the electronic version of the return that's going to be submitted to the IRS. The IRS is they're looking for little simple things. And believe it or not, what causes a lot of these audits are the simple things, not double checking your numbers, not reporting income. and just claiming credits and deductions that they should not be getting, or they're just overstated.
Wow, a lot of helpful information. Thank you so much for
My
joining us, Carlos Samanyango, enrolled agent and founder of Tax Debt Consultants. Hopefully, we'll be in talk soon. And thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bye-bye, Brad.
Thank you so much to our producer, Tania Sims, for that conversation. Hard to believe it is already 2023's tax season. I feel like we just filed our taxes, but time to do that again.